Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forms. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with its authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome. We're back with Writer's Corner, and as usual, we have two of Minnesota's outstanding writers who are joining us and really here to educate you. I'm Alan Miller, your moderator, and hopefully silent moderator. On my left is Marjorie Mathison Hance, and Marjorie is the author of 3 titles, 2 of which are displayed here. She will tell you more about herself. And over here we have John.
Harrigan.
I know that. I was trying to think of the JJ. What's the J for?
John.
John Harrigan.
I felt if E.E. Cummings is good enough for him, J.J. Harrigan is good enough for me.
Good. And John Harrigan has written this very fine book, Goodbye Cuba. He has another book coming out in about a month, which he'll tell you about. And without further ado, Marjorie, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how you got into this mess?
Sure. Well, I've written 3 murder mysteries that all take place on lakes in northwestern Minnesota. The first one is Murder at Pelican Lake, and I've been on Pelican Lake for 58 years. I've owned my parents' place. I bought it from them 25 years ago. And actually what happened was that I was up there alone for the first time about, maybe 12 years ago. My husband had died, my daughters had graduated, and it was always really busy at the lake and a lot of fun, and suddenly I was kind of bored and didn't know what to do with myself. So I started writing about some of the characters on our beach, just because it was raining and I had nothing else to do. And my mother read what I had written and she said, "You can't publish that." And I said, "Well, I don't plan to publish that." And as I thought about it some more, I thought, why don't I publish something?
Well, you have a corporate background.
I do.
It wasn't as though you just walked into writing.
No, but I was a business writer. I had been a national sales manager and a vice president in charge of fundraising, so I had done a lot of grant writing and a lot of business writing. Business writing is the opposite of writing a novel because you do only the facts, it's straightforward, you lead with the ending, you lead with the conclusion. And with a murder mystery, you have to wind your way through things and drop clues here and lead people over there and help
create
characters. And it's a very, very different skill. So it's been a lot to learn and fun to learn. It's been great.
Now let's make the disclosure that there are not a lot of murderers at Pelican Lake.
No, I get asked that all the time. They say, "Is this a true story?" No. There are a lot more murders at Pelican Lake now that the 3 books have been published, but no, there are no murders at Pelican Lake.
Now, John, you had a background really in the military, and why don't you take it from there?
Well, I guess what I write, Alan, does stem from my background, part of it coming from. I was a soldier in Germany during the Cold War, and then later on I was a U.S. Foreign Service officer in Latin America. So I guess I was naturally curious about international intrigue and spying and those kinds of things. And then after that, I was a professor of political science at Hamline University. And what got me into writing really was that late in my career, the university decided we should all do interdisciplinary courses. So I created a course in politics and fiction, and I got my students reading political novels, most of them historical novels, And I remember this young woman came up to me and she said, "Professor, I was so engaged in this book. I wish I could have lived in those times." And that made me a little jealous because nobody ever said about my textbooks, "I wish I could have lived in your textbooks." And so I thought, and I realized something. I realized you can reach people through fiction in a way that you can't reach them through scholarly research. You can get them to feel what it was like to have lived through some moment
I
of
think
time.
that is so true. And as I mentioned to you before we went on the air, I have just completed a novel which is on its way to the printer, and it's about book banning. Now, we have seen hundreds of articles about book banning, and we've seen television about book banning, but we haven't seen a novel about book banning. So I took, based on a lot of facts that have been available floating around, and I fictionalized it, and hopefully in November we'll have a book out on book banning. So why don't you take it
Very
from there?
timely, very timely.
Yeah. I have everything but a title, and I've
will
been
come.
fighting with the publisher about a title. We've gone through about 20 so far, and none really catches fire. But you publish independently. Why don't you talk about that, and then John will too.
Sure. Yeah, originally I published through Beaver's Pond Press, which is still publishing, self-publishing, where I pay for everything. But I had a lot of support. They have great editorial staff, graphic designers, proofreaders, all of the supports.
Great reputation.
Great reputation. And since it was my first book, I really felt like I needed that. I needed someone who would take me through the process and make it a really high quality end product. And they did, which was great. And then after I got through that, I'd learned so much. It was expensive to do it that way, even though it was really great. So then I decided that I had some additional help that I could use to round out, like the graphic designer. I have a great graphic designer. But then I didn't need the other support services so much. And so I have uploaded my novels directly onto Amazon, which has saved a middleman and made it much quicker. I have thought about getting an agent and going the typical traditional publishing route, but that can take 3 to 5 years. And I wasn't ready for that. I really wanted to get my books out and have some fun with them.
Agents can put you off forever.
Yeah, it's a hard process.
Yeah.
It's a hard process.
There are so many writers out there. There's so many great writers in Minnesota, but there are not that many Kent Krugers in Minnesota,
Right.
or David Housewrights in Minnesota. Most of us are in the same position you are. John, what was your story?
The first things I did self-publishing, and it's an enormous amount of work. So when I found somebody who wanted to pick up a 3-book series, the Goodbye Cuba, which was set in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the CIA taps this Army lieutenant to go on a secret mission in Cuba, and the story develops from there and ends, of course, with the ending of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
He's an unlikely CIA agent, really.
A very unlikely CIA agent, but they had reasons for tapping into him. And so I finished that one, and I really liked it. And so I think, well, what's next? And so all my experiences are Latin America, and I picked the Cuban Missile Crisis because it's such a momentous event. And so I'm racking my brain thinking, what can I have this guy go into next? And well, what's the biggest event, the most disaster event in our life? Clearly, the Vietnam War, And so I set this in the 1968 campaign of Robert Kennedy running for the presidency, a big part of which was his campaign to bring the Vietnam War to an early close. And so I took the same character, made him an agent for Bobby Kennedy, and it goes from there. And that's going to be Goodbye Bobby, which is
Goodbye
out
Bobby,
next
which
month.
will be out hopefully next month.
Yeah, but I decided not to do the self-publishing route for this because it is so arduous. Unlike a lot of writers, I want to write, I want to create, I want to edit. I really don't want to do all those mechanical details. So when this person who was starting this new publishing company said, well, how about letting me publish them? I said, sure. So we got a 3-book series. And one of the stars of Goodbye Bobby isn't either Bobby Kennedy or the protagonist, but one of the characters that people have really latched onto is a 9-year-old girl who's the stepdaughter of the protagonist. And this really amazed me. I don't know why it did, because when I was sending it to writers groups, whenever Angelita would appear in the chapter, the excitement developed in the group. And it's coming through in the early reviews of it. So then I wanted to follow that up with a 3rd book for the series. And I wanted to focus on her. But what could I do with her? She was from Latin America, and she had nothing to do with the next big thing that happened, which in my mind was the Iranian hostage crisis, when the Iranians took over the American embassy in Tehran, took captive 50-some American diplomats. So what I had was, so I aged this young girl who was 9 years old in one book, so she's now in her 20s, and she marries a diplomat who ends up being a hostage in Iran. And so this story, it won't come out until next year, but so this is what I'm working on.
So you've really picked 3 different settings that have been really emotional in U.S. history. Is that how you decided which ones to use? Because you've got a lot in your background that you could have drawn from.
I guess I wanted something that was going to be able to have a character, have a protagonist, and a that, I don't want to say an inspiration, but so much of contemporary literature is so depressing and so dark. And I wanted something that could end at least on a positive note. So that, and you know, the Cuban Missile Crisis, it could have been a nuclear war,
right.
but there wasn't. And the Vietnam War, of course, is dark. There's nothing good you can say about it.
But it had, all your novels have a historical aspect to them, yeah.
But the
Yours
characters
don't
working
really,
their way
do they?
through that have some positive aspects to them.
Yeah.
Yours don't have a historical aspect to them.
No, mine are very current. What mine has, we were talking about this a little ahead of time, his really has a sense of a character in time, and mine is really a character in place. Mine is all about place. And what I've found is that people that are drawn to my books,
Pelican Lake.
It's not just Pelican Lake, it's that they love the lake experience. And I think people with the lake experience are very nostalgic about family, about good times they've had, about fun they've had, vacations. And that's what I found in the readers. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, oh, I love that. I knew that experience. I knew what that felt like. And so I think I tap into a little different emotion than the kind that you're tapping into, but we're both tapping into
But
emotion.
it comes through. I've been reading The Murder on Pelican
Thank
Lake.
you.
And yes, the reader, I've never been to Pelican Lake, but I feel like I know it.
Good. Yeah, it's fun. And that's really the fun
It's
of it.
interesting, the aspects that we kind of write our books around. I like to find current situations. Now, my first one is Holding Court. It's about the water crisis in the western part of the United States. The next one, which is here, Reluctant Madonna, is really about foreigners who are buying up mostly native lands in the Dakotas, etc. And the Chinese have been doing that. As a matter of fact, most states are putting a stop to it now. The third one, which is coming out shortly, hopefully, is about book bans. So again, it's current crisis.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how each of us has sort of segmented our trilogies on different ones. What are you working on now?
Well, my 3 books are in a series too, and they start with a young woman in crisis. And so she returns to Pelican Lake after her father has died, she's lost her main relationship and her job. And so it's been quite an upheaval in her life, and she comes to regroup because it's the only place she has. And so there are 3 books that really track her over the course of a year, and some of the experiences and some of the things that she didn't know that were happening that involved her father in particular, that she becomes enmeshed in once she returns. And so it traces her growth, her kind of coming to terms with her situation and what happened to her father, and a new relationship builds out of that takes her a different direction. So my next book, the first book takes place on Pelican Lake. The second book involves Cormorant Lake, which is nearby, and the third one is going to be on Lake Lida, and it's about ice fishing. It's called Under the Ice, and you can imagine where the person is found who's killed. So,
so you're going to have a series. There's a lot of lakes in Minnesota.
There are a lot of lakes. I could do 100,000 of these.
There's actually no holding back then.
Right, no holding back.
And when do you anticipate the next one will be out?
The next one should be out in January, so coming around soon.
Let me ask you about your process.
Sure.
Some people outline meticulously, other people write from the seat of their pants. How do you go about it?
Well, my first book, I had no clue where I was going. And so I would just start writing every day, and then sometimes I'd end up going, oh, that's not where I want to go. Because there was a young woman who's kidnapped in my first book, and I did not want to go down having a child hurt. So sometimes I'd get far along in writing, and I'd go, oh, no, that's too far. The second and third books, and now the fourth book, I know where I want to go. I have an idea of the general stages, and then the ending, and who does what, and who the main characters are responsible, and things like that. But I really build it as it goes, because what I found is that in writing, there are 2 things. One is it changes my mind about something will emerge, and I didn't even know I was thinking about that. And that will take the book a little different direction. So that'll involve some readjusting, and it might shift where it goes. The second thing, though, that I have found, and I want to know if you have this happen, is that sometimes when I'm writing, it's like I go over here into a different world, and these characters exist without me, and I tap into what their story is, and it feels very strange, because it's like the story comes to me and someone will say, well, you should have them do that, or you should have them say that, and I'll go, they wouldn't, because I know these people. And it's so weird to experience. It's like an experience of that is going on that's not just me pushing an idea forward.
It is weird.
Do you have that experience?
Some of the characters will take on a life of their own.
Yes.
And you're just trying to find out what that life is.
You have to find out what it is. One of my friends said, yes, it's like the characters tell me where they're going. I just am a copier. I just take notes.
Now, do you know the ending of your book when you start to write it?
I do now.
You do?
Yeah.
John?
Well, obviously I know how Bobby Kennedy's campaign is going to end in 1968, but I don't know what's going to happen to these 2 characters. And the reader, if they know anything about history, they also know how that campaign ends. And my hope is that what keeps them going is they also don't know what's going to happen to those 2 characters. And so far from what reviewers are saying, that seems to work.
Good. Well, you told me that people may know how the general story arc goes, and so you have to have enough tension to keep people interested, because they might know that there wasn't a nuclear war that happened as a result of Cuba, but they don't know some of the other tensions that are going on.
That's true. But I have a problem you don't have.
What's that?
I'll be writing something. Oh, in Goodbye Cuba, I had a scene. I was going to take my protagonist, and I had to send him into Washington, D.C. to do some research. And he was living in Arlington, Virginia. So I sent him over to the subway, to the Metro line, to take the subway into D.C. And I had that totally written. It had been sitting there, and I never came across it until I picked it up to edit it sometime later. I went, did that subway really exist in 1962? So I went back and I looked up. No, it did not.
No.
I mean,
that's why they call it fiction.
Yeah, but so I had to change that. You had to take a bus in.
Do you have to do a lot of research?
I do an enormous amount of reading.
Yeah.
But it's kind of focused reading. I mean, I don't do research in the sense that you did it when you were doing your work for your business, but it is research, it is looking up things, it's following up on things that people say, and there's, especially when you're dealing with these bigger-than-life characters like Robert Kennedy, you just don't want to get too much wrong.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
As opposed to just creating characters who you can make do whatever you want.
Well, you would think that, but there have been a lot of things where I have to do research. And an example of that is the ending of the first book takes place at the border of North Dakota and Canada. And so I would have things like the agent carrying a gun, and I thought, can agents, do they carry guns at the border? And how many cars, how many lanes would there be? How do they work their way through? So I have had to do a lot of research into things like border control. I've had an FBI agent who gave me a lot of feedback because there's an FBI agent involved in all three of my books. And so she would say, oh yeah, the FBI, I would never do that, or yep, this is what would be appropriate. And then I've had to involve the police because there are some police situations too. So they say, here's how you would really do it, here's what you call this kind of equipment, here's how it would be used. It's been surprising how much research I've had to do.
Yeah, I just showed Sharon, I compiled all the research and put it aside, and I have a stack
Really? That
that's
much?
like a foot deep.
Wow.
on research, and I think that's my law background.
Yeah,
But
sure.
research,
Yep.
and just do a tremendous amount because I want it to be accurate.
Right. You don't want to hear from a reader that you messed something up. So yeah.
Now, do you have a publicist, or how do you publicize?
I do. I've been working through an organization called Blue Cottage Agency.
What is it called?
Blue Cottage Agency, and they're out of Brainerd. I happened upon them. I was in Brainerd trying to get my books into a bookstore, and it was a bookstore that was actually more of a secondhand bookstore in antiques, which was not the right mix for what I was doing. And I asked her what kind of marketing she did, and she said, oh, you've got to meet these folks. They're magnificent. So I did. I followed up and just thought I'd like to know what they do. And they represent authors and independent bookstores across the country out of Brainerd, which is really nice.
Really?
Yeah. So they've helped me with social media. They've helped me with, I think how the three of us met. We were at a book signing, and they were helpful in getting that information out. They give a lot of advice, and that's been very helpful. Do you have a publicist?
Yes.
Yes.
Rachel Anderson,
Oh,
RMA, and she does a nice job.
yeah.
John?
I've been working with Rachel Anderson, but she's so busy I don't get much of her attention.
She is very busy, but she's effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the hardest things, of course. You write the book, then to get it published.
Right.
You get it published, and then who's going to read it?
Right.
You know, obviously, of the three of us, none of us are here for the income that we're going to get out of these books. But the other side of the coin is you do want some feedback other than just reviews. And you want, there are some writers like Brian Anderson who has a website, and he has hundreds of people who are participants in his website. I haven't done that. I don't know if you've done that.
No.
I know you have a website,
have a
but I don't know
website.
if you have.
Not that level, no.
No.
I'd
no.
like to. That would be fun.
It's very unusual,
Yeah.
but apparently very effective.
Oh, I can imagine. I think social media is really important.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of us who are writers, I think, don't necessarily, we like the story. We don't necessarily enjoy the business of promotion quite as much. But I have to tell you, probably the biggest surprise I've had about writing is that I always thought writing would be very solitary. You know, you'd go and write your book, and then somehow it would get sold out here. I mean, I knew I'd have to be involved in that. But writing is very engaged with people. People are an important part of it. I hear from readers at times. I had an email from one of my readers yesterday asking me if I was doing a fourth book. I had a book club who loved all three of my books so much that they have me come out for each book And then they rented an Airbnb up on Pelican Lake and came up as a book club. My husband and I took them on our pontoon boat, and there's a signature cocktail that's mentioned a couple of times in one of my books. So we served them that cocktail and took them all around Pelican. And it was like, I never would have dreamed as I started this that I would have that level of engagement with some of the readers. It's been so much fun.
Really get engaged.
They do.
You're absolutely right.
And I'm curious what your biggest surprise has been, because I bet you've had some too.
I think book clubs are fun.
Oh, they're wonderful.
I mean, logically, you're the business person, and logically it makes no sense. You spend an enormous amount of time with 6 people, so you're going to sell 6 books. But you're right. The interaction with those 6 people and is really wonderful.
It's wonderful.
They're really fun.
I had one person who lived in Nebraska, but had some ties with the Pelican Lake area. And so their family had a family reunion. She brought her entire family and said, would you come and meet with us? So I did. And they're giving me a lot of background information for Lake Lida, which is really fun.
Do you do a launch when you do your book? Do you have a big launch party?
Yes. Sometimes. Not for one of the books, but for one of them I did. And I also had, for my first book, I had 2 friends who were in my book club who had a competition for who could sell more of my books. And one of them was a woman who would just buttonhole people and say, you need to read this. And it was very, very supportive.
Now, you're both going to be surprised that we have used up almost all of our time. We have a minute left, so we started with you. Why don't we end with John Harrigan and a few words to your readers and to the people who are viewing this.
Well, the best thing I can say for you is pick up this. And when this one comes out, pick up this. I'm really proud of this. I'm really proud of it. It took a lot of work to do this. It was a little intimidating to take on a character like Robert F. Kennedy and build a book around him, especially with his tragic ending. But I'm proud of the way it worked out, and I think you'll enjoy it.
And Marjorie?
Thank you. My books are really fun. They're great, kind of a summer read, great character engagement, and it'll make you nostalgic for lakes.
J.J. Harrigan and Marjorie Hance, Marjorie Mathison Hance. Actually, thank you so much for sharing with us. And this is Writer's Corner. We'll be back again next month.